All right, let's dive right in to this deep dive all about Canadian national identity.
Sounds good.
We've got some really interesting stuff to dig into.
Yeah.
An article from the Globe and Mail arguing that Canadians, well, they're less proud of their country now more than ever.
Mm.
And we've got this whole Reddit thread just bursting with opinions on the topic.
Oh, that's perfect for us.
It's like we're walking right into a lively debate.
Yeah, for sure.
What struck me right off the bat, just reading through it all, is that even the idea of what it means to be Canadian, like what even makes up Canadian identity, that seems to be up for debate.
Totally.
Like before we even talk about, are we proud or not,
Yeah.
we need to figure out, well, what are we even talking about when we say Canadian identity?
Exactly. What is that?
So help us out here for our listener.
Well, national identity can be one of those kind of tough concepts to really nail down.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's about those shared beliefs, those values, the symbols, the things we do, the cultural things that people kind of connect with a particular country.
Right.
It's that sense of belonging you get.
Okay.
And what makes us different, from all the other nations.
So it's deeper than just like waving a flag and singing, "Oh, Canada."
Yeah, definitely.
It's like a deeper connection to a place, a deeper connection to the people.
Absolutely. And that connection,
Yeah.
it can be so many things. It could be
Yeah.
participating in those traditional, cultural things, or even just feeling a sense of pride in our achievements as a country.
Okay, so now let's get into this Globe and Mail article.
Okay.
Robin Urbach, she argues that Canada, we've lost our national identity, and that's why people aren't so proud anymore.
Right.
So what are her main points?
So she points to this decline in what she sees as those classic markers of Canadian identity.
Okay.
Peacekeeping, our commitment to being inclusive, our healthcare system, which was, once something we were really proud of.
Yeah. She argues that these pillars of being Canadian, they've kind of eroded over time, and that's feeding into this feeling that national pride is fading.
She even brings up the fact that back in 2021, Canadian flags were flown at half-mast, on all those federal buildings for almost half the year.
Right.
Because of those discoveries of potential unmarked graves, at those former residential schools.
Wow.
And she suggests that this kind of reflects this new focus on dwelling on past wrongs, which could have a negative impact on national pride.
Especially for younger generations, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what she's saying.
She's arguing that maybe that focus on the negatives
Yeah.
of our history makes it harder for Canadians, especially younger Canadians, to feel proud and connected to their country.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But then we look at that Reddit thread, and it looks like a lot of Canadians they don't agree with this at all.
No.
And I'm pushing back. A lot of pushback for sure.
A lot of folks saying that Canada does have a strong national identity, even if it's not as, I don't know, like loud or showy as some other countries.
Right.
They see it in things like our multiculturalism.
Yeah.
That strong sense of community we have.
Yeah.
And our connection to nature.
Makes sense.
I don't know if you saw this one comment. It really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned watching Hockey Night in Canada, but the broadcasts were in Mandarin and Punjabi.
Oh, wow.
Like, that just seems so Canadian to me,
Absolutely. It really highlights that blend of tradition with multiculturalism.
Yeah.
It shows that Canadian identity, maybe it doesn't always show up in those classic ways. Maybe it's more subtle, more nuanced, but it's still there.
Yeah, it's there.
And, that ties into this idea that multiculturalism, instead of, weakening Canadian identity, can actually make it stronger, make it richer.
And this kind of leads us to another piece of this whole debate.
Yeah.
This not American factor.
Right.
Both the article and the Reddit thread kind of touch on this.
Yeah.
This idea that being Canadian is kind of about what we are not.
Yeah.
Which is American.
Yeah.
Oh,
for sure. That comes up a lot.
Like for decades, Canadians have been, maybe not intentionally.
Yeah.
But they've been defining themselves in opposition to the U.S.
So like the classic little brother thing,
Yeah.
You got to set yourself apart.
Yeah.
Show how you're different.
But do you think is that healthy? Is that sustainable?
That's a tough one.
Can we just be not American?
Well, on the one hand, you can see why Canadians would want to do that, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. has such a big influence on us,
Yeah, they do.
culturally and politically.
Sure.
So, it makes sense to want to be different.
Right.
But on the other hand, if we're always focused on what we're not,
Mm.
are we really figuring out who we are?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Like we're letting the U.S. define us.
Right. Even if it's in reverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is something Urbach brings up too.
Mhm.
This growing Americanization of Canadian culture.
Right.
And she suggests that, as the lines between our two countries get blurrier,
Yeah.
maybe that's part of why people feel like they're losing their Canadian identity.
That's interesting.
So maybe it's not just about dwelling on the past, like Urbach says.
Mm.
Maybe it's also about figuring out how to deal with a really powerful neighbor
Yeah.
in a world that's getting smaller and smaller all the time.
I like that. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know.
It brings in that outside pressure,
Right.
that affects how we see ourselves.
And whenever people feel unsure or anxious,
Yeah.
they start looking for someone to blame.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what we see happening in this Reddit thread.
Totally.
Some people are pointing fingers at Trudeau. Others are blaming immigration or the media.
That's so interesting, though, because you can see what people think the problem is, where
Yeah.
they think the threat to Canadian identity is coming from.
Yeah.
For some, it's the leaders. For others, it's about, who's coming into the country. And for others, it's the media, always focusing on the negative.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one comment I have to tell you about this.
Okay.
It compared Canada to a UN refugee camp,
Oh, wow.
which, it's pretty provocative.
It is very much so.
But it shows how worried some people are about how immigration is affecting Canadian identity.
Yeah, it's a powerful image, that's for sure.
But we're seeing lots of blame, but not a lot of agreement on what the real problem is.
Yeah, or how to fix it.
Yeah, it's like everyone's, they feel like something's wrong,
Right.
but they're not sure where to point that feeling.
It's like a general sense of unease,
Exactly.
Something's changing, but nobody knows exactly what it means
Exactly.
for us for being Canadian.
And that can be scary.
Yeah, it can be.
So we've talked about what national identity even means. We
Yeah.
looked at Urbach's argument that it's declining, and we've seen all these different opinions from Reddit.
Totally.
So what do you think is the most important thing for our listener to take away so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this whole debate, this whole conversation about what it means to be Canadian,
Yeah.
it's far from over. There are really strong feelings on all sides.
Yeah.
And it's clearly something that Canadians are wrestling with, in a very real, very personal way.
So it's not just an academic debate.
No, not at all.
It's something that's affecting how people feel about belonging
Absolutely.
and about what it means to be Canadian, like you said.
Yeah, and that's what makes this conversation so important. It's not just about, figuring out who we are right now. It's
Yeah.
about figuring out who we want to be.
Going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well said. This is definitely a conversation we need to keep having.
For sure.
But we'll take a pause for now.
Okay.
Let our listener, process all this.
Right.
And when we come back, we'll explore some potential solutions for, revitalizing Canadian identity
Okay.
and see if we can find any common ground in all of this.
Sounds great.
So, welcome back to our deep dive into Canadian national identity.
It's a big one.
Before the break, we were talking about all that anxiety and blame surrounding this idea that we're having an identity crisis.
Right, right.
But I want to shift gears now
Okay.
and talk about some potential solutions.
Yeah, let's get positive.
Because despite all that finger pointing, the Reddit thread also has some really interesting ideas about how we could actually strengthen Canadian identity.
I like that. Yeah, it's nice to see that.
Yeah, like even though there's all this debate,
Yeah.
people still want to, find ways to make things better.
Absolutely. Always good to focus on solutions.
And one idea that kept coming up over and over was investing in Canadian arts and culture. Like people were saying we need more Canadian content.
Right.
Like music, books, movies, TV shows.
Yeah, stuff that actually reflects us.
Yeah, stuff that shows, our own perspectives and experiences.
I think that's a great point. If we support our own artists,
Yeah.
our own storytellers,
Yeah.
we can build this richer, more vibrant cultural landscape, something that Canadians connect with and something that, helps shape our national identity.
It's like, those old Molson Canadian commercials?
Oh, yeah, I am Canadian.
Yeah. I mean, they were cheesy.
Oh, for sure.
So cheesy.
But they tapped into something real.
Right.
Like that feeling of national pride.
They really did, yeah.
Like we're all in this together.
And, they understood that storytelling cultural touchstones.
Yeah.
Those are so powerful, you know.
They bring people together.
But it doesn't have to be all about beer and hockey.
No, not at all.
Like, there are so many Canadian stories out there
Oh, I bet.
just waiting to be told.
Mm.
And maybe by supporting our artists,
Right.
that's how we bring those stories to life.
Yeah, it's about celebrating everything. Our diversity, our history,
Our unique place in the world.
Exactly.
But what about the government?
Mm.
Like, should they be involved in this?
That's a good question.
Should the government be, like, actively promoting a certain vision of what it means to be Canadian?
That's tricky because some people think, yeah, absolutely, the government should be, out there promoting Canadian culture and values.
Okay.
But then others say, no, national identity has to come from the people.
Right.
It can't be forced on them.
Urbex kind of suggests that there's this lack of leadership on this whole issue.
Yeah.
Like, no clear message from the government about what it means to be Canadian,
Yeah.
in today's world.
In the 21st century. Yeah.
She even brings up, Trudeau's post-national state comment,
Oh, right.
which really upset some people.
Yeah, that caused a stir.
Big time.
For some, it seemed like he didn't care about national identity at all.
Mm.
But others saw it as, trying to be more inclusive,
Okay.
more open to different ways of being Canadian.
So it's like there's this tension
Oh, definitely.
between, holding on to those traditional ideas about national identity
Right.
and adapting to a world that's more diverse, more globalized.
Absolutely. And that tension shows up in the immigration debate, too.
Yeah.
Some people are worried about how large-scale immigration is affecting Canadian values and culture. And
If newcomers aren't integrated,
right.
it could lead to, people feeling less connected and a weaker sense of national unity.
That's a valid concern, yeah.
But we also have to remember that
What's that?
Canada's always been a country of immigrants.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, our whole history is built on waves of people coming here
From all over.
And they've enriched our culture.
Yeah.
Or contributed to who we are.
Totally.
So the challenge is finding that balance
Balance is key.
between welcoming people and making sure they feel like they belong.
Right.
But also holding on to those core values and traditions.
Yeah, the things that make Canada unique.
Exactly.
It's about creating that sense of shared purpose, that feeling of belonging, no matter where you come from, And that takes open dialogue, understanding each other's cultures, and being willing to accept that Canadian identity is always evolving.
And speaking of change, we got to talk about this generational divide.
Oh, right. Big one.
It came up in the article, it came up on Reddit.
It's everywhere.
Like how different generations view national identity. Urbach points out that younger Canadians,
Millennials, Gen Z.
they have the lowest levels of national pride.
And the comments on Reddit, they back that up.
Totally.
A lot of young people are saying they don't feel it,
Yeah, they're disillusioned. They're not optimistic about the future.
Yeah, you can see why.
They're worried about the economy, about housing costs, the job market, climate change.
It's a lot to deal with.
It's a lot. And it's no wonder they're not feeling that strong sense of national pride.
Right, when you're struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah.
When you're worried about the planet.
It's hard to, be super proud of your country.
No matter how great it is or how great its history is.
Exactly. So maybe to address this generational divide, it's not just about, promoting Canadian culture or debating immigration.
Right.
Maybe it's also about tackling those underlying economic and social anxieties.
Yeah. The things that are making young people feel this way.
Exactly. It's about creating a Canada where everyone feels valued, everyone feels included and optimistic about the future.
Yeah, maybe it starts with actually listening to young people, hearing their concerns, and working together to build a more just and equitable society.
I like that, building a stronger national identity.
Yeah.
It's not just about celebrating the past.
Right. It's got to be about the present, too.
Right, and creating a better future for everyone.
Absolutely, for all Canadians.
So it seems like we're back to that original question.
Which one?
What does it even mean to be Canadian?
Oh, right. The big question.
In the 21st century.
And there's no easy answer, is there?
No, but maybe just asking the question, like having this conversation, maybe that's a good start.
I think so.
By talking about it, by acknowledging these complexities, these anxieties, maybe we can start having more productive conversations about how to how to strengthen that sense of belonging
Hmm.
and create a Canada
Yeah.
that reflects everyone's aspirations.
I like that.
And to our listener, we want to hear from you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
What's resonating with you?
What's challenging your thinking?
Because this conversation, it's really just beginning. Wow, it's amazing how much we've uncovered in this deep dive into Canadian identity.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about.
We've gone from our history and values to all these anxieties about the future.
Right.
We talked about promoting Canadian arts and culture, dealing with the influence of the U.S., figuring out how to integrate newcomers.
And addressing those concerns that younger generations have.
Exactly. But with all these different perspectives, do you see any common threads?
One thing that keeps coming up is storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's supporting Canadian artists or having these conversations between cultures,
Right.
or even just sharing our own personal experiences, it seems like storytelling is really important.
It is. It's about sharing those stories that capture, like you said, the essence of what it means to be Canadian.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the messy stuff.
Yeah, all of it.
It's about finding those connections, the things that weave our different experiences together.
Like a tapestry.
Exactly.
And maybe that's how we can revitalize Canadian identity, by embracing all those different stories, all those voices.
Right, recognizing all those unique perspectives that make up Canada.
So instead of trying to force everyone into one single definition of what it means to be Canadian.
Right, like a cookie cutter.
Yeah, maybe we need to create spaces where all those different voices can be heard.
Yeah, and celebrated.
Yeah, creating a sense of belonging, not through conformity,
Right.
but through inclusivity.
Yeah, like recognizing that everyone has something to contribute.
Right. No matter their background, no matter what they believe.
Exactly.
And maybe that's what will ultimately make Canadians proud.
What's that?
Not just, what we've accomplished in the past.
Right, but what we're capable of.
Yeah. Our ability to adapt, to evolve, to face those challenges of the future.
Together.
Yeah.
I think you've hit on something really important there. National pride, it's not just about, holding on to the past.
Right.
It's about having faith in our ability to build a better future.
Believing that Canada, even with all its problems,
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
is still a place where people can have a good life for themselves and their families.
That's a powerful message.
And that's a story worth telling.
Absolutely a story worth sharing with the world.
It's a story that goes beyond generations, beyond languages.
Beyond cultures.
Yeah, it reminds us that even though we're different, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Trying to build a better Canada for everyone.
More just, more equitable, more prosperous.
Well said. So to our listener out there,
Yeah, we want to hear from you.
we want to ask you, what's your story?
What's your vision for Canada?
What values, what dreams will shape our future?
Because the future of Canadian identity, it's not something that's just given to us.
Right.
It's something we create.
Together.
Exactly. Your voice matters.
It does.
Yeah.
Your story matters.
And by talking about this, by being part of this conversation,
You're helping to shape that future.
thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Canadian national identity.
It's been great having you with us.
We hope this, got you thinking, sparked some new ideas.
And inspired you to keep exploring this topic.
Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep those conversations going.
Because the story of Canada, it's far from over.
It's being written every day.
And you're a part of it.